Hi, my name is Ben Skydell. I teach here in Drisha at the Dr. Beth Samuels High School program, the July Kollel, and the Adult Ed Continuing Education. In this week's Parsha, Parashat Shofetim, we are introduced to various leadership structures in ancient Israel. So, for example, we are told in the 18th chapter of the book of Dvarim that as opposed to the Canaanite idolatrous priests that the Jewish people will encounter as they enter into the land of Israel, Navi mikirbacha me'achecha kamoni yakim lecha. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet from among your people like myself, says Moses. Elav tishmaun, to him you shall listen. So this figure of the prophet is to be contrasted to the earlier description in the Parsha of the Shofetim, the Shotrim, the judges and officers that the Jewish people are to place in each and every one of their dwellings in order to ensure that the law is carried out. As a matter of fact, the Navi, the prophet, and the Shoftim, the Shotrim, the judges and the officers, are among the many types of leaders that we encounter in this week's Parsha. We also are told about the Kohanim, the priests, the Sanhedrin, the great court that met in the temple, and the Melech, the king as well. An important and very fundamental question is, what is the relationship, practically, between these various different avenues of power? Or more specifically, what happens when there is a conflict between them? And while it is outside the scope of a short video to really adequately discuss everything about that, I want to draw your attention to a very, very important and fundamental point raised by Rambam Maimonides in his introduction to the Mishnah. There he writes as follows, that when it comes to the difference between a Navi, a prophet, and any other sage in Israel, in this alone does a prophet differ from other people in the matter of commandments. However, regarding deduction, reasoning, and understanding of commandments, he is as all other sages who have no prophethood, and they are like him. Maimonides Rambam continues, that is to say, if a prophet should argue an opinion, and similarly, if a non-prophet should reason a differing opinion, and the prophet should say, the Holy One, blessed be He, told me that my conclusion is the correct one should not listen to him. Even if 1,000 prophets, all of the stature of Elijah, Eliyahu, or Elisha, would hold one opinion, and 1,001 sages would hold the opposite opinion, one must follow the majority. And the final ruling is in accordance with the 1,001 sages, and not in accordance with the 1,000 honored prophets. Maimonides continues a few paragraphs later and says, the Holy One, blessed be He, did not permit us to learn from prophets, rather from sages, people of deductive reasoning and knowledgeable views. It is not written, and thou shalt come to the prophet that shall be in those days. Rather, you should come to the priest, the Levite, and the judge that shall be in those days. What Rambam is telling us is as follows. A prophet is there for inspiration. A prophet is there to strengthen God's word. A prophet may even be there temporarily to suspend God's word. But ultimately, the practical business of halakha, of ruling in Torah matters, and deciding what the law should be on this earth, is not in the province of the prophet. And even if the prophet wants to add his voice to the conversation, his voice is like all other sages, and his voice does not in any way trump that of any of the other sages in their deliberations. This is a very, very important and fundamental principle, according to Maimonides, of Jewish jurisprudence, of halakha, and what it means to live a life of Torah and mitzvot in God's world. The prophet may be there to inspire, the prophet may be there to teach, the prophet may be there to bring God's word down into God's world. But when it comes to deciding halakha, we follow the majority view. And in that matter, the prophet is no different than any other sage, and quite the opposite. He has no right to invoke his prophecy as a final word in any argument. Shabbat Shalom.